Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Now if you're happening on this channel for the first time, this is where I kind of go back down, into memory lane. Memory lane for me is way back in the early 60s and 70s and maybe touching into the 80s a little bit. And this is where I sit and I talk about my childhood memories growing up in rural Jamaica around that time period. Right? Now I'm going to be talking about something today that I think a lot of us, a lot of individuals, a lot of kids who grew up in rural Jamaica around that time can relate to, right? Whether you were a boy or a girl, right? So let's go back a little. Now, back in those days, early 60s, 70s, I'm talking about rural Jamaica now. Kids living in these rural communities. Many of us run around the place, walk around the, the village community, bare feet, right? No shoes. It was just a part of life, right? That was the norm back then, Kids walk around bare feet, right? It was no big deal. Nobody judged you for that or anything. If you're able to wear shoes at least, to go to church or maybe to school, that was a privilege. That was something that you should be giving thanks for. But anyway, so back in those days, man, kids walked around barefoot. And one of the challenges of walking around barefoot in rural Jamaica, if you've ever been to Jamaica or you have ever visited the island, and you have left the resort or come off the main road and venture into the the villages and whatever, you would quickly realize that Jamaica, the terrain is rough and rugged, right? It's no smooth plain out there, right? So as a kid, that posed a challenge for us. I mean, we got used to walking around in these, in this kind of environment, but inevitably something is going to go wrong. And one of the things that goes wrong back then is you walking. You may be walking, just regular walk. You may be running to the shop. You may be walking to school, or wherever you're going, and man, you buck your toe. You buck your big toe. Do you understand what I mean? For someone who have never heard the term buck or buck your toe, I mean what I mean is that you're walking, and normally people don't look down where they're putting their feet. It's not normally that you're watching every step that you make when you walk, right? So, you're running to school, you're looking ahead. You're obviously, you're taking a glance here and there on, on in the path or on the road or in this little track or whatever, you used to call it, to make sure that, the way is clear. It's free from obstacles. It's free from anything that might hurt you. But like I said, the terrain is rugged. Rocks and tree branches and all kind of stuff, you have to encounter with from time to time. So there are times when you're walking to school, running to the shop, you're out playing, and inevitably your toes are gonna come in contact with something hard. Right, and one of those hard stuff that especially your big toe, may come into contact with really hard are rocks that are jutting out of the soil, and man, that is one of the worst experience you can ever have. Because not only is it painful, but sometimes the contact, the impact is so hard, and like I said, the term that we used back home is the term buck. You buck your toe, and sometimes the impact is so hard that the entire front of your big toe, or whichever toe that came into contact with the rock or whatever obstacle, the entire front area of that toe got ripped off. The front, this area here, the hard part, the hard skin, got totally ripped off, and it's blood, and oh my goodness. It was one of the worst experiences I can recall growing up as a kid. And you have to carry on with your life, right? Not because, your toe got hurt, why you're going to sit at home and not, you're not going to choose to go anywhere. Your parents needed to go places. You need to go to school. You need to you need to go in search for firewood. You need to carry water, so life has to go on. So in many cases, as kids, all we had to do was to find some old kind of clothing, because back then, maybe you could go to the shop and buy a Band-Aid. But I can tell you, that wouldn't last. That would not last for many reasons. Walking barefoot with Band-Aid on your big toe. Now think about that for a minute. So a lot of times what we had to do, we would find some old shirt, an old shirt or an old pants or any old piece of clothing material, and we would just rip it up, or rip some strips, and we would make a bandage over that big toe. Yeah, we would bandage it up, the best way possible, and and we would check on it from time to time. Every other day, we'd take off the bandage and see how it's healing up. But I can tell you, man, even with the bandage on, sometimes you're walking and you're more careful, right? But I've had instances where the toe is in the bandage and you buck that toe again. Oh, and so for that reason, you may have a buck toe or a injured toe, to use a more modern word, that takes quite a while to heal up and get better, because you keep on re-injuring it. Sometimes it's not a big impact, but you brush it against something, somebody step on it. It was just a painful and traumatic experience, looking back as a kid. Yeah, so that was something as a child I had to contend with. Many kids in the village or in the community had to deal with, and you would see boys, especially boys, walking around with their big toes in bandage. And for some reason, it was mostly the big toe. Occasionally, the other toes would get injured on one or both feet, but mostly the big toe on the dominant foot. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so we just had to deal with it, and we just had to carry on with life and do what we had to do, bandage it up as at the best way we could, and yeah. So if you have grown up in a rural community, I'm not sure where you're watching this video from. It could be North America, where I'm living now. It could be other parts of the Caribbean. Maybe you're watching from parts of Africa, Asia, wherever you are. Have you ever had that experience, where you buck your toe and rip it off and hurt it really bad? How did you deal with it? How did you, manage and cope with that experience? Something I recall, I don't know if it was a myth or what, but sometimes, we have these injured toes, and it was getting a little bit infected, so to speak. And the old people, the old folks would say, let the dog lick it. The dog has healing properties in its saliva or whatever. And sometimes, we would have these injured toes, and we would take off the bandage, and if we could bear it, if it wasn't too painful, we would let the dog lick it. And I have done that. It has never gotten worse, nor has it gotten more infected because of the dog licking it. But nevertheless, it may have just been a mute experience or idea. I don't know whether or not it worked or not. But that was one where we kind of coped with it, apart from the bandage. Yeah, so tell me about your life experiences. Have you ever had, experienced something like that? And like I said, this is all about childhood experiences, right? This channel, that's what it's all about. So if you are happening on the channel for the first time and you like these kind of stuff, that I share, give me a thumbs up for this video. If you like the channel on a whole and the stuff that I talk about, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss a beat, all right? So until we talk again, this is Memory Lane. Take care of yourself. Until the next video, all right?